evening, women of GumGum. Upfront woman. I don't know why, but I like saying that.
That's
upfront
fine,
woman.
yeah.
And we're also, we're also honored here by other leading ladies in the area from Dollar Shave Club, Bird. They call themselves ladybirds, right? I think, which is kind of cute. Awesome. So welcome to our very first Women in Tech panel. And my name is Sampong Lada. I'm the VP of Global Marketing here at GumGum. I've been kickstarting Women of GumGum 2.5 years ago when I started, and building a strong women community within my workplace has been a strong passion of mine, and especially seeing to where it has been here right now is pretty fascinating across the global offices. And we've been recognizing women's achievements in our quarterly newsletter. We've launched philanthropy events with Vanessa leading, and in different offices, and also now we have our very first panel. So we have an amazing lineup of panelists today. So I would like to start by introducing each of them. And if you can also talk a little bit about your role and company, that would be great. So I have Alice Cheng here, our associate at Upfront Ventures.
Thanks. So what is it, just roll?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'm an associate at Upfront Ventures. So my background's actually in biomedical engineering, and I focus on our deep tech portfolio, but I do a little bit of everything.
Awesome.
Oh, sorry.
And then Shannon Phillip, co-founder of ShineBright.
Hi, thank you. Ooh, very loud. My name's Shannon. I'm a co-founder of ShineBright, which is a career coaching company. We work with individuals, helping them to identify their strengths, whether they're in a role that they love and they want to just grow and develop and figure out how to be more intentional and effective, or helping people transition from roles into, where they don't feel like they're tapping into their strengths and finding something that's a better fit for them. And then also working with organizations to help them take advantage of the human capital, the people that they have in their organization, and make sure that they're in roles that allow them to really thrive.
Awesome, thank you. And we have Jennifer Van Hook, our SVP of Sales here at GumGum.
Hi. So I know a lot of you, but for those of you I haven't met yet, my name's Jennifer Van Hook. I'm the SVP of Sales for GumGum on the West Coast. I have been with the organization for over 5 years and have seen this company really grow and flourish and definitely embrace all of the women here at the organization. And I always like to thank Sam for kicking this off, because without you, we wouldn't all be here. I think this is really important, and I hope you guys get a lot out of this evening. Yeah.
Great, awesome. And we have the strongest woman in the room here with her injured leg, but still made it. Thank you so much. And that's Donna Fleur, Senior Director, Engineering, front end of Dollar Shave Club.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Dana Fleur. That is loud, you're right. Senior Director of Software Engineering at Dollar Shave Club. I manage the front end team there, which is front end web development, email development, and mobile app development. I've been in software engineering for, I guess, my entire career. It was a slight deviation after college, though I majored in computer science. So I've worked at different industries throughout my career: nonprofit, publishing, local search and marketing. Now I'm on e-commerce, so it's been an interesting ride getting to know these different industries.
Awesome. So just to get to know our panelists a little bit more, I'd like for you to talk about how you've gotten to where you are, and it just would be great for us to see, where your strength lies and how you got there. Okay.
Okay. So let me give a brief background, because my journey is a little bit convoluted. So I was kind of academically tracked most of my life, did my undergrad and also PhD in biomedical engineering. So during my PhD, I worked on 3D printing, I was working on tissue engineering, a bunch of really cool, just next age technologies. And I wanted to stay in that industry. So coming out of that, thinking about getting a job where the industry wasn't really, and it still today isn't fully kind of developed. So it was still very young. I was looking for a job, and I was really interested in still working in the space. And kind of the only the only roles were either at startups or, at a VC if you wanted to evaluate startups in that space. So I was like, hey, I want to go into VC. But I was living in Richmond, Virginia at the time. So it's like not a startup culture, there's not people there. So I was like, hey, I need to go out to the Bay Area. So my next step was to get some business experience. So I actually went to management consulting for 2 years, and I was working in the Bay Area at BCG. And I worked in biopharma, and I worked in enterprise technology, but it was still not like the area that I wanted to be in. It was like a deep area of technology and a deep like software and a deep area of like biopharma, but really like not at the intersection where like the exciting research took place. And so, so one day I decided to quit. I think we're going to talk about work-life balance. So that was part of it. And I was like, hey, I'm really interested in venture. This is what I want to do. And I was like full-time searching for a venture role. And I'm sorry, but I don't have a good answer for you on how I got in. It was a lot of like cold calling. I literally walked into offices with my resume and was like, are you hiring? Will you hire me? That didn't work. Upfront did hire me apparently, but yeah, it was like a couple months later, like a lot of networking. There's just, I don't know. I think it's like the right timing and like putting in the work for it, but I really don't have a good answer. But yeah, but it's kind of like the world's colliding. The other thing I will say is that this was like kind of like specifically tracked for me. So when I reached out, I was like, I want this role specifically at the intersection of technology and biology. I want to also be a generalist, and I want to do these things. And it serendipitously happened to be that they were looking for this role with the exact description that I sent them. So again, like it's kind of like luck and timing. I didn't know. It wasn't like I applied for anything. It was they wanted it and I had it, and somehow the timing worked out. So that's kind of my story.
So how do you find luck?
I'm sorry, guys.
So how I got to, so I had no idea what I wanted to do in college. Majored in communications because like, well, I think I'll probably have to communicate. Pretty general. And my first kind of job out of school was working for an educational company, and I did it for a few years. I loved it. I thought there was a lot of meaning in it. But then I saw some of my friends working in finance, doing some other things and making better money. And I'm like, maybe I want to do finance. So moved to New York, worked in finance for a few years, and felt like my soul was dying. So some of the people I'd worked with at the education company had left and gone with the owners to a new company, which was a coaching company, providing coaches for college students, helping them through the transition of high school to college. So I got the job and I fell in love with coaching. It was kind of one of those moments where I just was like, oh, I'm good at this, right? It was like the moment that I'd been kind of seeking. Went back to school, got a master's in organizational development, which is kind of like change management or helping organizations really through a process of transformation. It's kind of like coaching on the micro level, helping an individual through transformation, and then looking at organizations on a macro level. So, but I graduated in 2010, which was 2 years after the economy had basically blown up, and I couldn't get a job. I was like, I have a master's. I thought I was going to be making lots of money, doing maybe management consulting, and I just couldn't get hired. And so my best friend actually had finished a master's in education and also couldn't get a teaching job. And we started having conversations about what she was doing and what I was interested in. And I got really interested in my master's program about why do some people find careers that feel like it's like their passion, or it's more like a career and like their life's work versus some people have jobs. So I wrote my thesis on adults identifying a path to career passion, and I got really interested in this idea that we all have kind of unique ways of being that can inform us to make good decisions about what would lead us towards our passion. And I thought I would work in organizations, but I was talking about this with my best friend, and she was volunteering in a classroom at Venice High because she couldn't get a job. And so we started to say, well, what if we actually brought what I thought I was going to do in organizations to young people and start talking to them about their strengths, and maybe this could help to inspire them or inform them about who they are before they're making decisions about their career. So we actually started Shine Bright 7 years ago and focused on young people, so working with high schoolers and college kids to help them find their strengths, and did that for the probably like 3 or 4 years, and then organically friends and family would be like, what are you doing, whatnot, and we'd say, oh, helping young people figure out their strengths so they can figure out what they want to do with their life. And not kidding, 99% of the response would be like, I still don't know what I'm good at. Like, can you help me? And so kind of organically, this career coaching piece happened just because there was such a need. Lots of people just out there not knowing, what are my strengths? What am I good at? Am I in a role that allows me to do what I do best? And so that part of our business kind of really took off and is the majority of what we do. But I think a big part of what drives my work is I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I had to offer. And so helping people discover that and helping people realize that everyone does have something unique, and finding their right space for that is possible. So, yeah.
So I also had a fairly circuitous path to get where I am. I was a history major, and actually women's history was my minor. And I loved history because it's not just cold hard facts, it's sort of the story around what's happening. It's the art, it's the culture, the food people are eating, like sort of this comprehensive story that tells what history is. And so I went to college in Connecticut, moved to New York City, and started in publishing, which was awful. I did not like it. I was chasing authors all day long, asking them to submit their manuscripts, and they would ignore me, and it was drudgery. I then moved over to the marketing department there, and I enjoyed that a lot. That to me felt more creative and felt more connected to the process and sort of the process of, frankly, selling a book. And then just out of nowhere, one of my colleagues got a job at a company called AOL. And at that point, AOL had 17 people in New York City. Yeah, it was wild. And I worked in sales strategy, which was sort of the story behind sales and figuring out, well, if I'm talking to a movie studio, how do I sell to them? What matters to them? What is important? And then if I'm talking to a financial institution, if they're going to advertise, what are they trying to accomplish? So I really enjoyed that part of it. Again, sort of the storytelling piece of my major kind of worked really well. And then I got pregnant, and I started to think about, well, I don't know, is this the path I'm going to continue on? And I think it's a moment in life where you start to think about these things. And I had a mentor who believed so strongly in me, and he said, I think you need to get into sales. And some of you have heard this story. I was terrified. I thought this was awful. I couldn't imagine sitting here and talking to a group of people. But he believed in me and said, you can do it. And so when I had my son and came back to work, I realized having a child made me realize I could do anything, honestly. Like, for the moms in the office, in the space, I mean, if I could get that going, then I could do anything I could put my mind to. And I also felt like I owed it to him because he believed in me, like he saw something in me that I hadn't yet seen in myself. And so I will, to this day, I'm forever appreciative for that person in my life. And from then on, I just sort of continued on my path of sales. I think I'm a very non-standard salesperson. I am passionate about the story we tell and how we connect with people to really make it resonate and make it so that they want to be partners with us. We think about our advertisers as our partners. They're not clients. And so that's something that's really important to me. And that's something I think I've been very successful with. And interestingly enough, like I've gotten every job through personal networks. Mm-hmm. This is so important to keep these networks up. And GumGum was the only job that a headhunter reached out to me for. I had no connection to the organization. And I was sort of like, that sounds interesting. I gotten to the point where I'd sort of grown my previous team to the point where I felt like there was nothing, I couldn't take it further. And GumGum was opening up or really relaunching the West Coast sales team. And that's kind of my specialty, is coming in and growing something from scratch. And so that was my new challenge. And here we are almost, 5.5 years later. So.
How did you get to LA?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I was working for the Tribune company, so all of those newspapers and websites, but selling the digital advertising. And one of the properties at the time was the LA Times. And so they were looking for someone to oversee the team, build from scratch. The sales team that calls exclusively on theatrical, the studios, and the television networks. And I don't know, it just was like one of those moments where New York was getting to be hard, but a kid in New York City is really tough. And I felt like I was up for the new challenge. So that's what it was. It brought me out to LA, that job. Yeah. Oh, you got one.
So I have somewhat of a convoluted path, even though I said I studied computer science. I've been in software engineering for almost all of my career, or my career is in software engineering, but I took a detour. I took a couple detours. I actually thought I was going to be a pianist. And I worked professionally as a pianist through high school and college, so I actually got paid to play the piano. And I'm from New York, and I was dead set on moving into the city after college, and there was no way I was going to get work as a pianist. It is so competitive. And when I went to college, I didn't know what I wanted to study. It was either math or music. I took a class in each. I wasn't really ready to be a student, and I totally bombed my math class. And I really wasn't into the group of people who I met in music classes. I was like, I don't know if I want to spend the next 4 years with these people, frankly. And so I had my mindset on this 300-level graphics class. So I was like, oh, I'll take computer science. It's just like 8 more classes to get to this graphics class so I can be a graphics designer. And I ended up never taking the graphics class. But I majored in computer science because I didn't have to write a thesis. I was a terrible writer, like severe writer's block, really bad. And so I studied computer science. That's really how it happened. I mean, I was fortunate to have, my father's a software architect and owned consulting businesses. So I had that influence in my life. So it didn't scare me, and I had support. So that really helped with my computer science background. But leaving college, I went to work at a music club. I had an internship there. It was called, some of you may be familiar with it. It was called the Knitting Factory. There used to be one in LA. It started in New York, and it was just so cool. Like I wanted to do something really cool, be around interesting people. And so I did this like crappy little internship, and there was a receptionist position open, and I took I was a receptionist coming out of college with a computer science degree before 2008. Actually, it was at the end of the bubble bursting, and so I really wasn't sure what I was going to do. I had no idea what my career was going to be, but I just knew I wanted to be where I was at the moment. Then my first check bounced that I got from the company. I was like, I'm not going to stay here. So there happened to be a coworker there whose husband was hiring for a software developer. And I had been doing little stuff on the side. and I was hired there. Like my check bounced, and I think a couple days later I went in for an interview, and it was at Environmental Defense Fund. So I worked there for a few years, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but it was a job. I think you're talking about job. At some point in my career, the job became a career. And I don't really know when the crossover was. I think maybe was when I went into management, and that's more of my happy spot in a software engineering career. But I had to go through that individual contributor experience to get to a place where I felt like, this feels right. This feels more right. But I moved from New York here on a whim, pretty much. I was like, I'm kind of done in New York.
Common theme here.
It's hard. Yeah, okay. It's hard. I was getting angry at like random strangers for no reason whatsoever. I was like, this is ugly. This is not who I want to be. And I love New York, but oof. So I quit my job, I got rid of my great apartment, and I drove out here with a friend for like 6 weeks, figured I'd settle in LA. I didn't have a job, I didn't have a place to live, took a big chance, but it was like, this is my opportunity to do it. I'm not gonna get this chance again in my life, probably. So I moved out here, I had this idea I was gonna go into music production. So I worked part-time on a contract job, doing front-end engineering. And I interned for a music producer, like out of his apartment studio while he played video games. And I worked on, what's it called? Pro Tools or whatever. And so I did that while I was working part-time. I took classes in photography. I was like, I'm gonna be a photographer. Really, I was just like, I'm gonna be an astronaut, I'm gonna be a singer. And then at some point, I needed to grow the front-end team at my job. And that's when I made that step into management, and I took it way more seriously, and it kind of blossomed from there.
Wow. So where are you part-timing now?
I have like
We
3
can go-
part-time jobs, I feel. Yeah.
Just kidding. So Shannon, as an executive coach, for those here in the room who are trying to discover their strength, or what advice would you give, or how do you even coach the men and women these days to figure that out?
Yeah, so we actually utilize an assessment tool that's been around for a long time. It's called the Strengths Finder. I think actually now they rebranded it to the Clifton Strengths Assessment. Anyone can take it. It's online if you go to gallupstrengthscenter.com. This particular assessment tool identifies your top 5 talents. And they define talents as your natural ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. So it's this idea that we all have this kind of unique way of moving in the world, of seeing things, perceiving things, experiencing things. And these talents, these natural ways of being, hold clues for us in terms of where energy comes from, what our intrinsic motivators are, and where our greatest opportunities for potential lie. So we have our clients take this assessment, but taking the assessment's cool. It can be like, oh, that's validating. Yeah, these are my talents. But the work that we do with our clients is really about unpacking. What does this mean? How have these qualities been showing up in my life already? How have they been with me in moments of success and confidence and fulfillment, and really helping them to explore just kind of naturally, what makes you happy, what fascinates you, what comes naturally to you, what do you do, and then you can't wait to do it again, and then connecting the dots between that and your talents, and helping people to kind of map out their life a little bit more to be able to identify and name, their unique brand. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, Donna, as a engineering lead, especially in a male-dominant, department, what are your thoughts on succeeding in your role? It'd be very interesting. I know we have a few engineering here. So, and also kind of foster a culture of diversity and equality within the department.
Okay. So, yeah, being in a male-dominated field, that's something that I've grown to become comfortable with. I think as I've grown to become more comfortable with myself and what strengths I personally have, where I don't feel like I need to act more masculine, where I know I can succeed, and where I do succeed is probably because of other traits that might be considered more feminine, which would be like mediation or being wanting to come to a conciliatory solution, or listening and empathy, and these are things that I sort of feel strongly about, and kind of rely on just my natural way of being to get me through, and hoping that has value. On the other hand, though, I am comfortable and have always been very comfortable throughout my life with men. I think even in high school, like, I had more male friends than I did females, which may have just made me also a little more comfortable in the industry, though that's not like, you just have to be really comfortable with men and you're fine. I think it's important, and I've heard this from a lot of women, like, it's okay to be a woman. Like, it's great. Be yourself, really. And that's really important to show that anyone, whether you're man or woman or other, are valuable and have worth as yourself and for what you bring, instead of trying to be somebody else. For diversity and inclusion, that's difficult. I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done there. There are some people colleagues who are more aware of the need for diversity and how to handle that, and how to foster a safe environment and an inclusive environment. And it's, I think we as women, this isn't incumbent upon us, and it's not just about being a woman or a man. Diversity includes a range of qualities that completely transcend our gender. But just to focus on being a woman right now, what was I going to say? Oh, educating people, not just men, but women as well, who tend to have a bias. We've historically been impacted unconsciously, whether we like it or not, by societal norms and stereotypes that we've seen as well. But when you're able to kind of break out of that and recognize it, I think being very vocal about it, being an advocate for other women and other people who are not readily included is really important, and like, be ready to stand up for that as well.
Thank you. And Alice, what is it like in the VC world on that front?
So, is this on? Yes? On? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's so I guess it's pretty well known. Venture's pretty male dominated, both on the I guess venture capitalist side and on the funding side. I can speak for upfront ventures. I don't really know how it is across the industry. We are pretty committed to diversity. This is amongst our own partner team and our investment team, and this is also, not just female or male, but across like how you think, where you're from, and I think that really comes to the table in terms of every time we have a partner meeting and how we discuss deals and what people bring to the table. Everyone is really unique and provides that something extra that's really specific to them. That's what I love about our fund, and we're also committed to it in our portfolio companies. So in our term sheet, we actually have an inclusion clause, a clause that states that you will, I don't know the exact language, but it's like you will at least interview people for exec positions that are underrepresented. So that's kind of how we try to incorporate that, that principle as much as we can as a venture fund without being like, you have to do this. And then we're also actively, we also brought on a talent partner. So she really helps us push that as well when she works with our portfolio companies. So.
Awesome. TJ, you hear that? Awesome. So 50% of women are more comfortable at work when they have a mentor to look up to. So being in leadership positions, who was your mentor and what advice would you give?
I mean, I talked. I spoke about my mentor. Obviously, having one is incredibly important, right? You need someone to help guide you through the course of your career and your life, right? So having someone that you look up to and respect is truly important. So for me, it was allowing myself to believe in something I didn't believe about myself. I mean, he saw something in me, and like I said, I'm grateful to this day. So I think if you're lucky enough to get a mentor, and I definitely encourage people to try to forge those kinds of relationships, they often see things in yourself that you don't know is there or you don't know is possible. And I, listen to them. I think sometimes they've got the right answer. I'm also the kind of person, if a challenge is put in front of me and I think I might not be able to do it, I'm just going to do it. So that's kind of a part of me, and he may have realized that. He may have realized that. But again, just allow yourself to be open to a different perspective. Again, people may see things in you that you may not know is there, or a strength that you haven't identified in yourself quite yet.
Are they usually within the same industry, or it's like somebody you want to be, or it's just somebody who's like more experienced and somebody you have, respect for?
Mm-hmm. In my case, was someone in my industry, so had lots of experience, kind of knew how it all worked, could sort of see the path, and was just a very in tune kind of person. So that was my experience. It was someone within my industry. But of course, Sam, you and I both know someone outside of our industry who's very much a mentor role, and she doesn't know the first thing about our day to day, and it doesn't matter. She really is about kind of helping you figure out who you are and where you want to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would consider a former boss of mine a mentor who similarly saw something in me that I definitely didn't see in myself, where I would say I had maybe crippling imposter syndrome. And though at the same time, I would try to put myself in positions where I was uncomfortable, and make myself a little uncomfortable as often as I could to kind of adapt and grow from that. And this manager of mine was the one who kind of got me into, I think I started reporting to him after I became a manager. And he just gave me work to do and put me in front of people and said, I'm going to work on your visibility. You're going to be a brand name in this company, and people are going to come to you, and I'll help you do that. I was like, okay. And it was scary. But he really pushed me to break out of my, I guess, shell a bit. I think one of the defining moments, he had me join an software architecture council that had all levels of, I think it was like director, VP mostly, some management, and he asked me to give a presentation on web performance, actually. And I felt like, I was like, do I know enough? And I, like, why am I an expert in this? I felt like I actually was the expert in the company on this, and I still felt like what am I doing in this group of people, giving them a presentation? And it was really scary for me, but I did it, and I got like accolades. Like, it was interesting to people, and they learned things, and it was like, oh, like I actually do have something to contribute. And so he really helped me break through a lot of those kinds of barriers. And he took me with him to another job, and he gave me opportunity there and just really let me run with things. Like he trusted me, and just having his trust enabled me to do more.
Awesome. Shannon?
So I thought about this a lot. We had so many mentors along our path, and we weren't planning on starting a business 7 years ago, and it just kind of started with an idea. And I think one of the things that really stood out when I was contemplating this idea of a mentor is back to strengths. And my business partner and I were really clear on what we were good at and what we brought to the table, but also really clear about where our weaknesses were. And we sought out people who were experts or were stronger in areas where we were weaker, and have had the privilege of working with incredible people that similarly believed in our vision, believed in us, and helped us to kind of dream bigger, or believe that what we had was viable and that it could actually be a business when we didn't believe it. But I think, being strategic about recognizing where are your gaps, and seeking out people who are experts or stronger in areas where you're not, can be really a powerful strategy too.
So most of my experience has been having a mentor is like having a manager, kind of like I've been I don't know if it's like a forced mentorship, but it's like kind of the position you find yourself in, rather than seeking somebody out. So that's kind of what I'm working on now, especially here where I work with 6 partners. So that's like having 6 bosses, which could be bad, but it's also having 6 mentors, and perceiving them as people who can help you and support you, and actually asking them for time. And that's something that I'm personally, I don't know, if that comes from my academic background where it's more hierarchical or whatever, but that's always been hard for me to even can I get 20 minutes on your calendar next week to talk about development? That's something that I'm personally working on. So, but seeing them as mentors and kind of having a healthy relationship has been really helpful for me, at least here. And then also at the end of the day, and I'm not advocating to go get married or go find a boyfriend, but I will say my husband is super supportive, and I love women, but at the end of the day, I go home to a man, and it's been I think just talking through emotional issues or whatever, all of that stuff, even if it's your best friend or whatever, I think there's always a person that's not necessarily professional, who's just in your personal life that really cares about you. And I think having that's really important.
Girlfriends.
Yeah, girlfriends, whatever. Child, dog, whatever.
Awesome. So there was a study unveiled a few weeks ago, and it mentioned that Parenthood has made mothers and fathers more empathetic, improved their ability to be more purposely, use of their time, and also respectful of other people's time. And in fact, 75% of mothers think that Parenthood has made them better leaders. So I know we have 2 working moms here. I want you to touch a little bit on that, on how that actually helped you as a leader.
I think it goes back to the statement I made before, which was, if I could do that, I could do anything, truly. And, my family, my son is my priority, number 1 priority. And I wouldn't be good at my job if I didn't take care of those relationships. But yes, I think that, I think about the fact that my son will be in the workforce at some point. He's 14, so we have a little bit of time. And I think about what that experience would be like for him. And, try to treat my team with respect and kindness. I think that's what you're asking me. How does it, I do think though that believing that I can accomplish what I need to accomplish came, there was a switch almost, I can do this, you know. And I had imposter syndrome too. Yeah, it's really hard. That's hard, but it is. It feels like one. But yeah, that's kind of
An
the way I
expert
think
in
about it.
juggling your schedules between school,
That's
work,
hard.
and yourself.
It's really hard, and I put my family first. That is, I will never get those concerts or plays or whatever back. And I won't always be a GumGum, right? But I will always have Charlie and always have the rest of my family. So, you know, I think that's part of this is like prioritizing the things that are incredibly important to you that you can't do anything else unless you have those things, and nurture them and pay attention. So one of those things for me is my family, things like exercise, like, you know, but my family is definitely one of those pieces, and I will never sacrifice that.
Before I forget, I just thought of something. And what was it? Oh, right. I thought, and it was gone. Just about balancing family and making it a priority. Something I read recently that really sparked, that made a lot of sense to me was making sure that you talk about it in the workplace and make it normal. Like, I'm leaving to go to my son's blah, and that's fine. Like, it's not an excuse. It's just, I'm going to do this thing, and that is what is expected. And normalizing parenthood in the workplace, because it can be. I don't think it's the case at Dollar Shave Club at all, but I know it can. I've read stories about this where it really can be like a hidden factor of people's lives, and bringing that out in the norm, I think it engenders a much friendlier attitude toward being a parent in the workplace and making those allowances and giving people the freedom to make these choices. But yeah, I have a 5-year-old son. And frankly, now I said that thought, I don't really remember the crux of the question.
Being a better leader.
Better leader, right. It gives me an excuse for being forgetful. Yeah, absolutely. When I got pregnant, I had started my job at NBC Universal, and the day after I started, I found out I was pregnant. And it was my first director position, and I was terrified already of the job of move. I had been at my previous company for 7 years. It was a big deal to transition, and I had to start a team from scratch, and it was a lot of newness. And all of a sudden, I was like, I'm pregnant, and nothing else mattered. I was like, I can do that. Like, this is the most important thing. And it just gave me the confidence to just do my job, basically. And I feel like that now. It's like, I have a son, whatever. Like, I'm just gonna, I got this. Like, whatever this is, it's not that it pales in comparison. It's not quite that, but there's some aspect of just, I grew life and maintained it, and the struggles are like nothing else when I go home, like that people like have no idea. And you know, I go to work and I'm just like, I got this. This political situation, whatever. So yeah, I think it really helped. Like, from the leadership perspective, for the imposter syndrome, it kind of calms me down. Like, it settles that aspect of me where I'm just like, you know, who knows what I'm going to find tonight when I go home, and what battle there's going to be about bedtime. It's just like, yeah, I'll go into a room and talk to 40 people and talk about why this thing is late, or, you know, try to sell this idea and influence them. I have to play a psychological warfare with my son tonight just to get him into his bedroom for the 15th time. So this is totally easy.
You can like send a Google Cal invite for that?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no.
So that's the same thing happened to me. I discovered I was pregnant right after starting a new job. Surprise!
Plan accordingly. I'm just kidding.
Having that conversation was weird,
Oh, that
right?
was, oh yeah. Yeah, when they took me out to drinks and like, here, congratulations for starting. I'm like,
Cool. So on that theme of kind of like work-life balance, if each of you can kind of tell the audience a little bit about, what are some of the tips?
I guess I'll go first. So when I'll talk about my time in consulting, so I was in consulting. It's a lot of travel, a lot of hours, and I thought I would like it. Somehow I didn't find it very fulfilling. I was like very career driven. I don't know what happened, but I was actually sitting in church one day, and the pastor was talking about aligning, like figuring out what your values are and like finding your platform. But what I took away from that, he said, so one, what do you value? And two, does that translate to what's on your calendar? Like literally pull up your calendar and what is on your calendar for today and tomorrow and whatever, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I just realized on my calendar was like all work. And it was like Friday night and it was working. Sunday night I was like thinking about work. It wasn't even on my calendar. I was just always thinking about it. And that's why I was so unhappy. So I think, so the two things, it's not just, figuring out what's on your calendar, but figuring out what should be on your calendar. So what are the things that you value? So that was really, I took some time to really think about that. And, I don't have a family, but I was recently married. And so it's kind of like, do I want to focus on that relationship? Do I want to focus on making a slide deck? I'm sure there's more, fulfilling work that I could have found or doing whatever. But, I think that's kind of like a little bit of soul searching. So like, what are the things that you find that are, and I think there are seasons. So I really can't explain why I hated working so much at that point. I'm sure it had to do with kind of the value reflection. But I think I was just at a different season in my life where I was like out of school and I was like, I put a lot of time into that like phase of my life. And this is a different phase of my life. And I think I'm changing. And I think that's worthwhile to realize that you are different every, couple years or whatever those phases are. And to reevaluate what that is and what you truly value and how that reflects on your calendar. And so, I quit my job and I was like, F this, and I'm out. So I was unemployed. I was like kind of employed, but like not really employed for a couple months, and was like full-time searching for this. So, I like this so far. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. But I think that was really important for me and a way to like really codify it that I'd never really thought about before. It's so simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of second that. She said it beautifully. I think just the term work-life balance isn't enough because it really is different for every person. So I would absolutely agree. Taking time to really identify for yourself what really does make up for a nourishing, fulfilled, valuable life, and taking time to identify that, and then making sure that you're being intentional about where you spend your time. And making, the other things that actually fill you up a priority just as much as work. And I think, one of the things that I was thinking about as she was sharing too, that I see a lot with my clients is that I think it's a society thing, but we value productivity. And so it's really easy to put all of our self-worth and our value in being really busy or working a lot, and on a surface level feeling like I'm working a lot, this is, I'm really contributing, but at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a sustainable model, and it really isn't at the end of the day, what makes up for a holistically fulfilled life. And so I think recognizing how you can feel valuable and have self-worth by doing a good job at your work, at your career, but also having these other parts of your life that you're investing in that have a return on investment as well. So
I think we're kind of all saying the same thing, and it's going back to what I said before, is figuring out what those things are that you won't compromise on. Are you guys familiar with the Big Rock, Little Rock? Yes. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, if I showed you a jar that was full of rocks, you would look at that and say, okay, that's full. And if I were to pour in gravel, you would look at that and say, that's full. And then I'd pour in sand. And the point of that is that you can always shove more stuff in your jar, right? You can put it in there. The sand is the least important. And if you fill the jar up with the sand first, there's no room for the big rocks. So that's the idea. So how do you figure out what your big rocks are? And you have to do that, right? And again, this is the stuff that if you don't prioritize and focus on, you will not do well in the workplace or with your relationships or with anybody, your friendships, because you haven't taken care of yourself. So think about the big rocks and the little rocks. But for me, whatever visualizing that was a kind of a key moment for me. And the big rocks, I won't compromise on. So
Awesome. I'll just say I don't think I do balance very well, so I'll admit that. But I've always thought of it as a choice. It's not. There's no prescription for it, but and that the big rocks can change. And one day, frankly, it may be the gravel and not the rock, is the way I look at it. And it's every decision you make is just a choice. Where am I going to put my energy toward today? And am I taking care of myself? And if that's the most important thing, then is it the most important thing today? Or is something else more important? Like I have valued exercise previously, and that has helped me, I guess, focus, and it's cathartic for me to get out all that crap that builds up over the day that I don't have even time to face. So like something happens, I'm gonna push that over there and I'll just deal with it later. But some days it's like I'm not getting up. Like I'm staying in bed. I'm not going to the gym because that's just more important right now. And so I often choose to work, except something happened recently. My son did this, it wasn't for Mother's Day, it was something else, but maybe it was last Mother's Day, I don't even remember. Time passes so weird. Did like a questionnaire, and the teachers helped him fill it out. I mean, he isn't writing. So, but it was like, what's your mother's favorite color? What's your mom's favorite thing to do? And he answered work. And it was crushing. I was just like, oh God, like that's what he like he didn't say play or like run around or watch TV even. I don't know. Not that we really watch TV at home. But something's flipped for me a little bit where I spent a lot of time working at home. I love working. I love solving problems, and that's what really attracts me to the industry that I'm in software engineering and management software engineering. The kind of problems I don't get to face as a mother. So I will choose to work at home, but having that question, like having him answer that question, I don't have the drive to work from home. Like it was like a switch that was flipped. I was just like, I'm putting this aside as much as possible. So it can change. Things can change.
Awesome. I think those are really great advice. So I wanted to open the floor to the audience to ask some questions. We have a few minutes left. Anyone? Lauren?
I have a question.
Hi. Oh, jeez. I'm just going to put it out here.
Yeah, I feel like I can talk louder than this microphone, but I'm just going to keep it at a safe distance. So I had a question about business resources, specifically for women, that you think are really helpful. Do you have any suggestions about, things online or programs or things that we could look into on our own?
I highly recommend the Alpha Network, which I just joined recently, so I don't have a lot of experience with it. I believe you need an invitation for it, but it's a community of women online where it's just like it's a forum you can post and comment, and it feels like a kind of a safe place for women to talk about the challenges they're facing or ask questions and just get other, people, a narrower group of people who are like-minded to participate in the conversation.
Are you familiar with Think LA? So that's the LA sort of ad community club, and they have a female mentorship program that's available to people. So it's people within our industry, everyone from like creative directors to salespeople, and so that's a good local resource for something like that.
I'm stumped, and I feel like I should know an answer to this, and nothing is coming to mind. I'm gonna come back. I'll think about it, and I'll send some resources to some. Do you work at GumGum?
Yes. I do.
Okay, I'll compile some. I'm like, gosh, I can't think of a single one. I'm sorry, but I know that I know some, so I'll continue to think about it.
I don't really have anything. I actually personally am not really great in like big groups, and I feel like it's actually cultivating like a group that like you could be part of it. For me, at least, I could be part of a larger group, but also like finding specific people within that group to kind of to like really grow.
Anna?
I don't need a microphone.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I talk
Your voice
really
will be
loud
heard.
about,
Yes.
yeah. So one of the things I love that I heard today was just in order to normalize parenting, it's just about, it starts with just talking about it openly, telling people what you're doing, making it the norm. What's interesting, I also came from AOL, where the culture was just naturally a little bit more mature by the people that we were surrounded with in terms of where they are in life. And then when you kind of move to like a more startup vibe, naturally you are reaching and working with those young and energetic with the fresh ideas and the inspiration and the energy. But how do you, outside of just talking about it, what are other ways that you suggest that we can really normalize parenting? Because what I'm seeing personally at GumGum is other people are entering the next phase in their life in terms of their personal life. So how does that become a little bit more of a priority for the company, or just even shifting how people think?
That's a good question.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Like I said, you guys know I've been here 5.5 years, and for a long time I think was one of the only parents, and there were no resources for me. I didn't even know who to talk to. I mean, people did not share my story particularly, so I think you're right. We're entering a new phase of GumGum, and it's an exciting one, but I think it's something we need to work on. I don't have the answer. I'm looking at Kelly.
We can start telling our story.
We'll start a resource.
Just don't switch jobs.
Yeah. So I think what you're hearing is like people realize that's something we need to do, and it's definitely the right time in this particular organization to start thinking about these things. So, we have more and more working moms, and that's something we should work on together, and more working dads too, right? So they have their own challenges as well. But yes, it's normalizing it in the workplace. It's part of people's lives. It's nothing to be ashamed of or hide that you prioritize these things. So it's probably time. I keep looking at Kelly, HR.
And I think it's part of having the conversation, right? It's celebrating it. It's talking about it one-on-one. It's talking about it in groups. It's, I love your point about like, this is what I'm going to do now. It's like there's no apologies for it. People don't apologize for needing to go to the gym. And so, but I mean, absolutely, I feel like that things are shifting at GumGum, and we need to talk about it both informally and formally, and look at all the things we offer. Are we offering parent-friendly things? But I'd love all your thoughts on that as well. So, yeah.
I was going to recommend if you don't have an HR group, or we have a people team who is reaching out to understand what drives the individuals and what the needs are to best support them. Make friends with that organization, get to know them, and then talk about what you would like to see more of. I think just general career advice is something that I try to do, is get to know the people who are in support functions in your company. Like when you come in, because they're the people who you're going to have to ask things of regularly. And it's just, I think it's really important to form a relationship and just not always be on the like asking end. I need this, I need this, I need this. Facilities, whatever. Like get to know them. It goes a long way. So that similarly, like in having a conversation like this, understand how the HR group works and how you can get involved. Really, if that sounds good to you. Okay.
We work with a lot of organizations, and it's actually pretty rare to see women in a lot of leadership positions. And I think just to recognize GumGum for having seemingly a lot of women in leadership positions, and I think that's really the first step, and having women in leadership positions that are mothers who prioritize their families is where it begins, and having more conversations like this. And it's why it is important to have women, at the top and leading and modeling. And sometimes it's slower than we want it to happen, but it seems like it's happening here too. So
Awesome. And
how do you break through the boys club? Oftentimes I find myself being one of the few or the only leader, like women leader in a conference room or in a boardroom or in meetings. So definitely have a seat at the table, but how do you break through the actual boys club and actually be heard and be part of the impact?
It's really hard.
Yes.
It's really hard. Because you can feel isolated. It's difficult. For a lot of my career, I was too afraid to speak up in the room. And I think when I started figuring out what my strengths were, my personal strengths were, and I realized I can do that better than anyone in the room, and what I'm bringing is valuable, and they need to hear this other perspective. Because if I don't say it, no one else will, but it's hard. And I think just remembering your value and remembering your strength, it's sometimes just like the first time you open your mouth and saying it out loud and participating, and I think you'll find people are respectful, but it's difficult. It is. And so how do you break through? Find what makes you you, figure out what your value is in that room, because it's going to be important, it's going to matter. And try not to be shy, try to stick with it, try to say what you want to say and add what you want to add. And maybe they won't always listen to you. And that's not good. That's on them, right? But at least you've tried, and I think it builds up. You become a valuable member of the team, and hopefully then it's a team and it's not, a group of men and one woman sitting there. So I don't have a great answer, but that's some advice. But it is a challenge. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd also add about don't be shy. I think over time, like the tides are turning somewhat organically, most definitely on the backs of people and women who have done the hard work already, but also with younger generations coming into the workforce who are more, seem more aware and have more empathy for other people who are not like them. That this is something I have personally seen at the past couple companies I've been to, with people who are in a, at this point, they're actually like at least one generation removed from me, which is hard to deal with. But that's one thing. I think there is there's a natural tendency toward other people in the room listening, but we can't rely on that. And on the topic of not being shy, I think, yes, to get there, some of us are going to have to push our way through a bit more, and make ourselves uncomfortable and speak up more. And that includes repeating yourself. Like, don't step back from a conversation because somebody didn't hear you. Like, in a room full, like you said, you could be in a room full of men at a leadership level, and you're, how do you get your voice heard? I've been in that situation where I've had somebody else I've said something and then they say the same thing, and I'm like, I just said that like a minute ago, and that will happen. But being able to, if you haven't been heard, repeat yourself again. It's like, I don't think you heard this point I made before, so I just want to repeat it. I said blah, 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 and then demand acknowledgement. And I think doing so and kind of repeating that, again, like just being repetitive with our actions kind of forces and educates other people.
Second everything, but I think earlier the conversation about mentors, having a mentor, having someone who can, support you, can help you strategize, a coach, not to sell myself, but, working with a coach to figure out what your strengths are, what you uniquely have to bring to the table, and continuing to lean into that. But I think also to just add on to what Dana said too, oftentimes not everyone is comfortable being that, person who's pushing. That's not your natural tendency. So sometimes it's about skill building, right? How to have more uncomfortable conversations, or how to learn how to speak up more. And we don't necessarily always have those skills naturally. So going out and are there classes, are there tools, are there workshops? But I would create community and support through mentorship and wherever else. So
I would also add, tactically, if it's convenient, I guess, for the other people around the table, for just to have a couple of one-on-ones with them, so you know them beforehand, and then it's kind of like building consensus before the meeting, depending on if it's like a decision-making meeting and you need to make a point. And also, I think, because I don't like it when it. Hello? Oh. I don't like pitting, this group of people versus me. And I think, yes, it can be perceived that way, but I also feel like because I myself have been on the other end of that, where it's like, maybe there's someone more junior in the room and the more senior people are ignoring them. And it's not because I'm purposely trying to do it. It's just I haven't thought about it. And, I think if I had a personal relationship or better relationship with that person, I would, kind of make sure that they're heard. And something I'm working on as well. But I think I try to be more empathetic toward that group, and saying maybe they're uncomfortable and they don't really know how to include me when I'm trying to speak up. So I just try to build the relationship on the back end.
I just want to add one more thing you said about practicing a skill. Do it in a safe space. So you can try to speak up more, push back more. Do it in a small group of people. Do it with people you feel comfortable with, and so you can practice it in day to day without without going out and seeking that. But also, that kind of sounds great. I would love to talk to you about that after.
I just wanted to add to that because at GumGum, it's been more comfortable, I would say, because the more you talk at the table, the more they're actually comfortable. And if I'm quiet, they're like, Sam, what do you think? I'm like, oh, you're asking me? We're making the men also comfortable with us speaking up. So the more you do that, the more it's going to be a norm within your meetings or your presentations or whatever you're doing. So I'm going to close this out here, and obviously we can mingle and talk more. I would like to thank Alice, Shannon, Jennifer, and Donna very much for being part of this panel. It's been so inspiring, and I think it's going to leave us going to think about, hey, what are we going to do with our work-life balance? Tomorrow I'm going to cut my meetings in half, by the way. Also, all of this would not be possible without GumGum. Our management team is really supportive supportive of this and also putting this event together. Vanessa Marrero, Maya, Madison, Kelly B, thank you so much. And also to all the women that showed up here. You're already there. You're already a step ahead from being in this room, by the way. So I'm hoping to create more of these networking events, more events, and we also have a women's Slack channel, so go on there. So thank you very much, and try to meet somebody you don't know today.